What's up, Beane Battalion? I'm still in timeout by YouTube. I'm living this 2 copyright strike life right now. It's great. I would not recommend it. So since I can't make really any big video essays for the next, 60 days now, we're almost there, guys. Kind of, not really. I'm counting down the days right now, just believe me. But I wanted to use this weird time in my life right now to make some videos that I maybe wouldn't have made normally. So today is the perfect time to talk about that because we are talking about my top 10 favorite film scores of all time. Scores are one of my favorite parts of films, and I've talked about it a little bit on the channel, but I've never had a video dedicated to it. So maybe I should be thanking YouTube for giving me 2 copyright strikes to give me a chance to talk about this. No, so scores are one of my favorite things about filmmaking. And honestly, it's kind of becoming my biggest toxic trait because I feel like if a movie doesn't have a really good score, then I can't really give it anything higher than a 7 out of 10, you know what I mean? It's just such a big deal to me. You can direct the most action-packed and emotional movie ever, but if you don't have a good score to go along with it, then I really feel like it can't ever reach that masterpiece level. And if I ever start directing movies in the future, I'm gonna make sure I make the score a big deal, a part of the filmmaking process, because I think it's by far one of the most important. So without further ado, I guess, I don't know, I've never really done a ranking on this channel before, let's get started at number 10. Here's the thing about number 10. It has to do with Indiana Jones, and I wanted to really include Indiana Jones on this list because it's just been such a big, important score of my childhood. But I was in between 2 different movies on this number 10. And actually, Raiders of the Lost Ark isn't even one of those movies. I was in between Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade. Now, here's my thought process on this. Temple of Doom has probably one of my favorite moments of all time in film scoring. I think it's called Slave Children Crusade, and it's when Indiana Jones comes back and frees the slaves. That song is just incredible and one of my favorite moments of all time. And so I was really banking heavily on that song to rank it highly on this list. And while that movie does have some other good moments, I particularly do like Short Round's theme quite a bit. I think I'm gonna have to go with The Last Crusade on this number 10 spot. The Last Crusade is very important to me. Not only is it my favorite Indiana Jones movie, I don't really know if I've ever talked about Indiana Jones on this channel, but that's my favorite one. But it is that, and also it has by far my favorite score. And I think a big part of that is because I played the Lego game so much as a kid. It really shaped my childhood. And so I was constantly hearing these songs, and there was just something so majestic and just, I don't even know, grand, I guess, about the Last Crusade theme. And that's why I'm ranking it right here. There are so many amazing moments in this score. I think by far one of my favorite moments of all time is when they see the knight at the end and he waves them goodbye, and that score, that haunting Holy Grail score, is just so good. And there's a lot of other really good moments. I love the motorcycle chase scene, and that specifically is what I remember a lot from my childhood playing those Lego games. Because I remember just driving around on that level, and that song was always playing on loop. So that song in particular is very important to me. And obviously, you have the classic Indiana Jones themes. But I think the reason why I'm including this, apart from Raiders of the Lost Ark, I kind of feel like the movies later on, since they added more and kind of innovated the original themes, I like them better. And I actually feel the same way about Star Wars, that the further the movies went along, the more I liked them because the more they were innovating and adding new things. Which is, spoiler alert, yes, we're gonna get to Star Wars eventually in this ranking. So let's go to number 9, shall we? Okay, so number 9, and actually I think some people will think that's kind of weird how low this one is, but we have Inception. Now, I had to include Inception on this list. You just can't make a top 10 favorite scores and not include Inception. I think there are a lot of great moments in the soundtrack. I love the hallway fight scene, for example. That has a really intense score that just keeps building and building. But I will say, I think the majority of this score is really banking on the fact of how good the track Time is. And without it, I think a lot of people would like this a lot less. I'm not saying everything else is bad, okay? It's still phenomenal. It's Hans Zimmer, there's no way around it. But I do think that anytime someone thinks of the soundtrack for Inception, time really is the thing that they think of. And honestly, that's not even a bad thing. I love that this track has become like the signature sound for this entire movie because it's just so good. Like, you can play time at any situation and it immediately makes anything you're doing like 10 times more intense and cool. Like, anytime I'm driving around with my friends, time shows up on aux at least once, like without fail. There's just something so haunting and grand about it. And it's just so unique in the world of film scoring that it has to be included on this list. Also, I guess I can talk about this now. Quick disclaimer to everyone. There is going to be a lot of Hans Zimmer on this list. Like, I remember last year for my Spotify Wrapped, I was literally in the top 3% of listeners of Hans Zimmer. So, yeah. So anyway, speaking of Hans Zimmer, we have number 8, Kung Fu Panda. And, well, actually, I guess I should say, he worked with John Powell on this score, which was just a lethal combination and made one of my favorite film scores of all time. Kung Fu Panda's score is just incredible. I love how they included like the ancient Chinese culture into this music, and it makes it sound really authentic and just perfect for the time period and setting. There's some really great moments in here, specifically like the Furious 5 theme and how Hans Zimmer and John Powell incorporate it into the bridge battle. And also that one moment where Master Shifu goes like, "Do you want to learn Kung Fu?" or whatever. I think that's what he says. It just has this really haunting, grand sound that just builds up, and then he just goes up on this mountain and says that iconic line. It's incredible. But all of that is still not as good as the theme of Oogway Ascends. When I talk about how they incorporated ancient Chinese culture into this music, Oogway Ascends really is what I'm talking about. The way they use like these flutes and just like the violins and stuff like that, and it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's insane that this like good of a score was in a movie about a talking panda learning kung fu. You know what I mean? The score, I don't even know. It's just incredible, you know? I don't think there's a way for a overall score to be perfect, but I do think that there is a way for a track to be perfect. And Oogway Ascends is a perfect track. Much like with Inception, I do think Oogway Ascends does a lot of the heavy lifting for this score, but still, if you have a track that perfect, like, you just have to make it into my top 10. That's how it goes here. Alright, at number 7, we have another DreamWorks masterpiece, How to Train Your Dragon. Also by John Powell. See, I'm not just a Hans Zimmer fan, you know, this isn't biased at all. I remember we played this song at my 8th grade, band concerts, and I don't know, I just remember being like, wow, why does this song go so hard? There's so many great action-filled moments, and like the romantic flight is really beautiful, but I think by far everyone's favorite moment is the test drive. That is just one of the most beautiful pieces ever, I think. It perfectly captures that feeling of riding that dragon for the first time. And it's just like, without that score, that scene would not be near as good as it is. I don't know if I have a whole lot more to say about this score, but it's incredible, so moving on. Okay, number 6 is gonna be a shocker for a lot of people. I don't even know if most people even know about this, like, original score. But we're just gonna go with it. At number 6, we have the 2013 Lone Ranger. Now, listen, I know it's a weird choice, but just hear me out. Again, this is another Hans Zimmer score, shocker. The reason I love this score so much is, while obviously the use of the original Lone Ranger theme is really great, I love the things that Hans Zimmer added to it, and that's why this is ranked so high, honestly. There's a lot of really good moments in this score, but by far my favorite is this track titled Finale. Not only is that final train fight one of my favorite like third acts of all time, but the music for it was perfect, and it's a big reason why I like it so much. There are just so many good moments in this score that I don't even know if I have time to talk about, because that whole track starts off with the original theme, but then it slowly shifts into Hans Zimmer's creation, but it still keeps up that really fast-paced like train vibe going on, and so it just fits perfectly. Again, I don't really know if I have a whole lot to say about this one, because I kind of just need you guys to listen to it, honestly. Because it's one of my favorites of all time. And I think it's definitely one of the most underrated in Hans Zimmer's career. But still not the most underrated. We're actually gonna get to that here soon. But yeah, there's so many like intense moments in this track. But I love how near the end, in the part where the Lone Ranger takes that one shot and says he's like a spirit walker or whatever. I don't really know. It's been a while since I've seen it actually. But I love how it becomes this really grand and like emotional thing with like it's hard to explain. It's really good. Go give that soundtrack a listen, specifically the track titled Finale. Like the track titled Finale is one of those songs that it's so fast paced that anytime I'm like late on like a school assignment and I need to get it submitted in time, I'll just put that song on loop and I immediately work like 10 times faster. It's a miracle, really. Hans Zimmer is out here saving lives, I guess. But okay, we're at the top 5 now, and I think I definitely have a lot more to say about these next 5 than I did the first 5. So number 5, we are going to go with Revenge of the Sith. Not only is this by far my favorite Star Wars soundtrack, but it's just one of my favorites of all time. This would take me like an entire hour-long video to talk about every single moment I love in this movie. So I'm gonna give you like the Sparks Notes version, but yeah, so let's just get into it. The whole Order 66 scene has one of the most haunting scores I've ever like heard in my life. But I think by far my favorite moment of all time in that soundtrack is where Obi-Wan goes to Padme. In that moment where he goes like, "I'm so sorry," and then walks back onto his ship, that moment is just insane. I think it's like a motif of like the Anakin betrayal, that whole soundtrack, but it just goes like full, like all out on it, and it's like, it's incredible. I don't know how John Williams did it. Also, this might be a hot take, I like Battle of the Heroes better than Duel of the Fates. I know, like, you can dislike this video as much as you want, I don't care. I think Battle of the Heroes conveys so much more emotion than Duel of the Fates. Obviously, Duel of the Fates is very, it's iconic, it's like, it's this haunting, really like action-packed thing. But I don't know, something about Battle of the Heroes just captures that perfect vibe of just these two people at odds, both of them thinking that they're in the right and just clashing. It's incredible, and the scene would not be the same without that, and I really wish that Battle of the Heroes got the same treatment as far as like just how much people love it that Duel of the Fates got. Okay, number 4, I can already tell this is going to be a huge shocker for a lot of people. This was the underrated Hans Zimmer score I was just talking about. At number 4, we have Rango. Now listen, Rango is like probably my second favorite movie of all time, and so obviously I might be a little biased here, but I think this is by far not only the most underrated Hans Zimmer soundtrack ever, but just one of the best like showcases of a really well-rounded theme that progresses throughout the movie, and it's not like there's just one track doing the heavy lifting here. Every single track I think is a banger. The reason I love this score so much is because it tells a story without even needing like the story, you know what I mean? Rango's theme starts off so like soft and just like very like insecure, and it sounds even almost a little like out of key, which is like a really awesome detail by Hans Zimmer, I think. But then the more it progresses, the more you go down like the tracks, the more the music swells and becomes just this like insane, like haunting theme, which fits perfectly with how Rango progresses throughout the movie. There are just some amazing moments here. I love his original, very like soft theme. And then I also just adore I think it's called like Rango Returns, when he comes back and like asks I don't remember what animal it is, but the bat people to help him in the fight. It's a really good movie. By the way, if you haven't seen Rango, go watch it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, anyway. But I just love that moment of that hero shot of him walking back, and the theme there is just incredible. Also, oh my gosh, the theme of them like running through on the Roadrunners on the desert, and then the owl starts like playing that guitar. That scene is just incredible, and the music is just so like fast-paced and awesome. And also, you have this like rendition of Ride of the Valkyries when these bat people are like gunning down them in like this canyon. It's an insane movie and an insane track, but it pulls both things off perfectly. I think the score is just so good because not only did Hans Zimmer, it feels like he took a lot of care in it, like making sure this like story like went along smoothly. But also, I like how he just like, it feels like he's just doing anything he wants at this point. Like the owl playing the guitar thing I just talked about. And I just love how much it, like, he cares, but also he doesn't care to like do something that is considered weird. He embraces the weirdness of this movie. And I think there was no other composer that could have done this movie justice that Hans Zimmer was able to do. And that's why I rank it so high. There's so much more I could talk about on this movie, but I'm gonna restrain myself for you guys. So let's just move on to number 3, shall we? Okay, number 3. This would be a sin not to include in a top 10 ranking. So here we go. Number 3 is Interstellar. There is just no world where I wouldn't include Interstellar on a top 10 film score rank. And honestly, I think everyone is required by law to include Interstellar in their top 10. I don't even know if I really have to say that much about this one. Because you know why it's so good. It's Interstellar. The track Cornfield Chase is a banger. Mountains is a banger. Oh, No Time for Caution. Oh my gosh, that scene is just incredible. All the time, my friends and I will quote that "it's not possible, no, it's necessary" line. And I think a big reason as to why we say that so much is because the score in that moment was so epic. And it's just like ingrained in our memories at this point. Because it's insane. And also, I think I read this somewhere. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, it's like insane. So anyway, Christopher Nolan apparently only told Hans Zimmer that the story was between like a father and the son, which first of all, it really wasn't even that. It was more about the daughter, which is kind of funny. But he didn't say anything about that it was like a sci-fi movie. And I cannot believe that he didn't even know it was going to be sci-fi, and he ended up creating one of the coolest and most sci-fi sounding scores of all time. I don't know how he did it. He has to have some kind of musical intuition or something. But yeah, you know, we're gonna move on because again, all of you already know that Interstellar had to be on this list. It's required by law. Okay, number 2. And this one has to kind of do with something I said earlier about how like later movies I like better in like these trilogies of like scoring because they like innovate and add to it. And this is one of the best showcases of that. Number 2, I'm going with Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically at World's End. I remember I talked about this a little bit in my video I did about this movie, and I said in that video that this score sounds the most pirate, which I still stand by, and I think it's a pretty good way to describe why I love this so much. This takes everything great about the score in the previous 2 movies and just dials it up to 11, and also somehow even making more music into it and just creating this like epic and just grand finale for this trilogy. And yes, I'm saying trilogy because to me the other 2 movies do not exist. This has to be one of like my go-to soundtracks on Spotify I'll listen to. Like anytime I'm writing like my books or my screenplays, I will always listen to this soundtrack in particular, just because it has such a like wide range of like intense and emotional moments. This just fits every single emotion you would want into one soundtrack. And again, there are so many good moments to talk about. I love that one standoff scene of all the ships and then like the 3 people come on the beach to talk. That I think it's called like Parlay. That one sounds very Western and actually kind of sounds like the Rango soundtrack, which would make sense because Rango did come out like a few years later after this one. So maybe Hans Zimmer was just testing his Rango music in that scene. But yeah, you have that. You have the song where Elizabeth Swann makes her grand speech to everyone and the music just swells up so much and it's just so like, it's just such like a rallying song and it is perfect for the vibe of that scene. I love the opening song in Singapore and then just everything, even down to the littlest detail, like all of those Jack Sparrows on that one ship. That song is also really good. My favorite thing about this score is how he adapts things from previous films and kind of like innovates them, really. That, like I said before about the Indiana Jones movies, this is my favorite thing about composers, when they are able to innovate their old scores and make it into something new. I think one of my favorite moments where Hans Zimmer did this is when Davy Jones and Johnny Depp are talking right before they fight on that one ship thing. And it has this like motif I think is from some kind of Davy Jones theme. But it's like, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's just like, it's so intense. And then what follows is really good within the actual fight too. So just everything about this movie is just so good. Again, just like with The Lone Ranger, this is like one of my favorite third acts of all time, and the music definitely does it so much justice. It's just the most perfect, intense pirate song you can get. Like anytime I play Sea of Thieves with my friends, we'll always put this song on because it's perfect. And this movie is home to one of my favorite uses of Jack Sparrow's theme, which is a pretty big deal because, you know, they use it a lot. And the scene I'm talking about is when Davy Jones is chasing him around that ship. He puts him in like the anchor thing and like spins him around a bit. And then when he stops and like does his like tentacle like scream at him or whatever, Jack Sparrow screams and then like runs around the ship. And I don't know what it is about how they use his theme here, but it's just like the most fast-paced and intense version I've ever heard of it. It's so good. You guys have to give it a listen. Specifically the one track called, I think it's like, I don't think now is the best time. Yeah, because it's like when they get married on the ship, which is a fantastic scene, by the way. But yeah, it's a fantastic track, and I highly recommend just listening to it like by itself. But yes, here it is, the moment you've all been waiting for. Number 1. All the way back to when I had this video idea, I knew I had to incorporate Henry Cavill's Superman's theme somehow into this. And I thought about it for a while, and I was thinking like, oh, just the Man of Steel soundtrack is just perfect. And then I thought, hold on now. I can still include the Man of Steel theme into this ranking, but instead use a movie that has that theme and then so much more on top of it. And so yes, it brought me to one of the most divisive superhero movies of all time, Batman v Superman. Now listen, this has nothing to do with the quality of the movie, and I don't even want to get into that argument because I actually really like this movie. But anyway, this has by far my favorite soundtrack of all time because it really just acts as like a greatest hits version of Hans Zimmer.
And Junkie XL, who I forgot to mention because I'm dumb. Anyway, let's get back to the video, shall we?
And Hans Zimmer
and Junkie XL
is just popping off on every single track in the soundtrack, and he doesn't stop. He just goes full force with every single idea he sets out to do. Like, yes, this movie does include the Man of Steel theme, which is why I love it so much, but it also includes so much more. The opening scene to this movie is like one of my favorite openings of all time, and it has to do with how good the theme is. Titled Beautiful Lie. It's really like Batman's main theme throughout this movie. It's just so haunting and tells the story of the Wayne family tragedy perfectly without having to use words. Also, really random fact that I'm sure no one cares about, the guy that plays young Bruce Wayne in that movie follows me on Twitter. I don't know why, and I don't know why it was relevant to mention. But yeah, moving on. Also, oh my gosh, we have to talk about Lex Luthor's theme. I don't know how Hans Zimmer did it, but he just perfectly captured Lex Luthor's fractured psyche into this song. And it's incredible. I can go on for hours talking about how much I love this movie, and the score is one of the main reasons why I keep coming back to it. The Lex Luthor theme is incredible. When he walks down that corridor, and then goes in full force, and look, everyone talks about how weird that Cherry Jolly Rancher scene is, and like, don't get me wrong, it is weird, but the theme in the background is just popping off, and no one ever talks about it because they're all just like confused as to what's happening, which, you know what, fair enough. Also, we can't talk about the score without talking about Is She With You, which is the Wonder Woman theme. Even for everyone that hated this movie, this was still like a universally agreed, like insane crowd moments. The score has to do a lot with that. It's just so interesting how he did it, because it shouldn't fit as well as it does. It's really interesting, like this song is written pretty strangely. Like there's a lot of accidentals in it, and there's a lot of like normal and sharp notes that are right next to each other playing like back and forth. And usually that would create kind of like a weird, like eerie feeling. But it works so perfectly for this character somehow. But I think by far my favorite moment in the entire soundtrack is like the Must There Be a Superman scene. I think it's titled Day of the Dead in the soundtrack. But that track in particular is just so good, man. It's just, listen to it, please. It's so haunting and eerie and just captures the vibe perfectly of this person that is trying to do the right thing, but everyone on the world is hating him for it. And it adds so much weight to everything. Again, I know I'm gonna get hate for this, but Batman v Superman is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. But I do think a big part of that is because the score is just so well done. I will rewatch movies often if they have a good score, and I think just Batman v Superman was one of the best examples of that. I truly just think that not only is Batman v Superman Hans Zimmer's magnum opus, but it really is just the best film score of all time. So I guess we're done now. I really don't know how people do these videos. So yeah, that's about it really. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I know it's a really weird time on the channel right now, but don't worry because we will get back to my typical video essays within the next few months, you know, whenever these copyright strikes go away. I should actually keep a calendar when these copyright strikes expire. I'm pretty sure it's September 23rd, so that'll be a great day to rejoice. Honestly, we should just make it a holiday at this point. I have no idea how to end this video, so just wear your seatbelt and eat your vegetables, everyone.